You're listening to WCAT Radio, your home for authentic Catholic programming.
Welcome. Our opening prayer is from the book of Exodus. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, "This month will stand at the head of your calendar. You will reckon it the first month of the year." I'd like to do something a little bit different. This is just a short talk that's appropriate for the season. We've just started a new year, and conversations often turn at this time to making resolutions. But oftentimes the conversation is rather scornful. The idea of New Year's resolutions are sometimes just taken very lightly. They're laughed at. Resolutions become the subject of jokes. It gives a lot of material for comedians and for cartoonists. And the resolutions are observed more in the breach than actually taken seriously. As a matter of fact, there is, in the middle of January, a National Ditch New Year's Resolutions Day, just a couple of weeks after they've been made for the beginning of the new year. People will make resolutions, nonetheless. They'll make a lot of them, and they'll forget them just as quickly as they made them. It all seems, at best, for a good laugh, or at worst, for a thing of derision about them. I'm composing this talk over New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, and so I thought what I would do is just simply give what I call a defense of New Year resolutions. Because I think if done properly and in the right spirit, they can be very beneficial and even have a spiritual aspect to them, as you'll see as we go along here. So what about these New Year's resolutions? Studies show that many people make them and just as soon forget about them or ignore them. What's the problem? I'm no expert on these kinds of things, of sociology or anything like that, or human behavior, but I think probably one of the problems centers around making too many of them, too many to remember. And also, too, I think, just from observation, that another problem is that the resolutions are made with sort of an indefinite time frame to an indefinite kind of future. And the resolutions themselves are sometimes vague, or they're overly optimistic. There could be any of a number of other problems. You can take a look from your own experience. Have you made New Year's resolutions? Have you kept them? Or not? And so there could be any of a number of reasons why people don't keep them, and what makes it a subject for comedy and even worse, derision or scorn. But I think the concept has merit. That's a lot of merit. And the reason for this has some spiritual aspects to it as well. Making resolutions gives us time to stop and to look at ourselves honestly. Because when you make a resolution, you've taken a moment to think and to say, there's something that I need to do better. There's somewhere I need to improve. And it can be sort of, in a sense, like an examination of conscience. We can do an examination of conscience for many different reasons than just preparing for the sacrament of reconciliation. As a matter of fact, in the liturgy of the hours, the breviary, the divine office, that priests, sisters, religious brothers, others, deacons, and even many lay people pray regularly. There's a place in the liturgy of the hours in night prayer, known as under the old name of Compline, where at the beginning of that hour it suggests a time to examine one's conscience. And so if you pray the office regularly, you would be doing that every day. So the idea of stopping and taking stock of things and see how you're doing is very much part of the spiritual life of the church. And so if you're going to make resolutions, you first have to see what needs to be done. And so you have to make an honest appraisal, like an examination of conscience. But it doesn't have to always be negative. It can be positive as well. You can ask yourself when you're thinking about your resolutions, what do I do well? What do I want to keep doing? Or what do I want to do more of in this coming year? And of course also to, where do I need to improve? And so this assessment can have both negative and positive aspects. And this assessment, this appraisal of ourselves should be done in a prayerful attitude before God. Doing this, there will be then, perhaps for most people, a fair number of possibilities. You really work at it, you can come up with a number of things, and that's fair enough. But what I would suggest is this. You do this assessment, come up with all the things that you want to do to improve yourself, and out of all of them all, just choose 3. Just 3 in different categories. First and foremost, make a resolution for Jesus. Whatever it would be, perhaps more prayer time, and be specific to say whatever works for you in your own situation. I'm going to spend so many minutes a day in prayer, or more minutes, something like that. Another example, I'm going to receive the sacraments more often. Whatever would be an improvement for you. Maybe you do receive the sacraments often. Maybe not. Again, it depends on your own situation. It comes out of your honest appraisal. To say, for instance, I'd like to make it to Mass more often than just on the Sundays. Or even, I'd like to make it to Mass on Sundays at least. You may be someone who's in a situation where you go to Mass regularly. Okay, well then something else. Perhaps to crack open the Bible and read some scripture every day. That would be a good resolution. And to be specific. You need a time and a space. You need time that I'm going to say to yourself, you're going to say to yourself, I'm going to do this at this particular time each day if I can. And to have a place where you know that you won't be disturbed so that you can do it. It helps to have that kind of a routine. Because then you can look forward to it and say, this is my time to read Scripture. And you'll look forward to it then and put it in as part of your schedule. You'll find a time when you know you can do it. Now, you have to change it once in a while. Sure, things come up, things happen, especially if you're a very, very busy person. But still, to look forward to it and say, this is my time. And it could be for other things besides just the reading of Scripture. It could be for any kind of prayer time. You need a time and you need a space or a place for it. And here is something helpful as well. In thinking about reading from the Scriptures, you might say, well, I'd like to read the Bible. Fine, wonderful. And you can get daily Bibles that pick and choose and skip around through the Bible and that. But if you really want to have a challenge, you could say to yourself, this year, I want to read the whole Bible. I want to read it from cover to cover, in order. That is a daunting task, or so it would seem, and it is, especially the getting through the Old Testament and such. So, as a scripture scholar, I'd like to offer this for you. If you take, and again, you can get a daily Bible and get through most of it, but again, those usually skip around and that. And if you really want to just do it from beginning to end, if you would take only just about 3 or 4 chapters a day, let's say about 4 chapters a day, that would be about 10 or 15 minutes. Now, sometimes it's going to be more, sometimes it's going to be less. When you get to the Psalms, take 3 or 4 Psalms a day. That you might do very quickly. Others are much longer. So average it out, whatever works for you. And take and start to read that. And I would say start with the New Testament. It's more familiar. The stories are easier to understand and follow. You're used to hear the gospel proclaimed at Mass, and so the miracles and the teachings of Jesus will be familiar to you. You hear the epistles of Paul at the second reading oftentimes. So start with the New Testament. It's less daunting. And that'll get you into this habit of doing the 3 or 4 chapters. Let's say 4. And then, after you've done the New Testament, then try to tackle the Old Testament. And let's be honest, you go into some parts of the narrative of the Old Testament, you're going to wonder what is going on there. You can get bogged down, and that, sure, that's very, very possible, and that I don't deny that. So, at that time, then perhaps, maybe go lightly over that. When you get to the parts with all the violence and the battles and everything, you might want to pass over those a little more quickly and such. So sure, go ahead and skip some of those dense passages, if you will, in the narrative books and elsewhere. But if you start with the New Testament that's more familiar and is shorter, much shorter, it'll get you into the habit, and then when you do get into the Old Testament, you'll be able to stick with it. But in any event, if you read those 4 chapters a day, you'll be able to read the entire Bible from Genesis through Revelation every year of your life. It'll just take you a year, and you'll do the entire thing for it. So, there's one suggestion. Or maybe you'd like to do something else, of some other kind of reading. Maybe of a saint. Maybe make a resolution to find out more about a patron saint of yours. Or a favorite one that you have that you'd like to know a little bit more. Or maybe you'd like to learn about a saint that is a patron or patroness of something you're interested in. Or maybe some saint you've never heard of and wondered about. Perhaps someone that isn't a saint but is a spiritual writer, and you wondered, what does this person have to say? I'd like to do something in that area of reading. Or it could be a devotional practice. Maybe to say, I'm going to do the rosary, I'm going to pray the rosary. Or I'm going to recite a litany or something. Again, if you don't do it, to start it up. Or if you do it, to do it more consistently, whatever it might be. So whatever it is, in this first and most important category, make a resolution for Jesus, something in your spiritual life, whatever it might be. Then, your second resolution. Make a resolution for others, for your neighbor, Perhaps repair a relationship. Maybe a resolution to reach out to someone that you haven't seen or contacted in some time. Maybe to visit someone who is homebound. Maybe to offer to help someone, and on a regular basis to say once a week, I'll do something. Maybe perhaps to volunteer somewhere on a regular basis, whatever works for your schedule. Make some kind of a resolution that will help somebody else. So a resolution for others. And finally, the third category, make a resolution for yourself. Whatever it might be, whatever you want to do, wherever you want to improve your life personally or to do something for that. And there's all kinds of things that you can think of or that other people suggest or that you've heard of or things. It could be anything, whatever it is. Maybe something that you tried before and haven't been doing it too well and still want to do it. Maybe to try something new, to broaden your horizons. You know yourself. And so pick something. So, something for Jesus, something for others, something for yourself. Now, you set this up at the beginning of the year, and then you can look forward. But I would say, don't look any further beyond a month. Just a month. So start at the beginning of January and just go for the month of January. And at the end of the month, check yourself on those 3 resolutions. How did you do? How did they go? Was there something that was a short-term resolution and it's been accomplished? And so now you want to do something else for the next month in one of those categories? Or do you want to keep going with what you did in this first month and continue it on for another month? Or did you not do so well? And do you need to redouble your efforts now for the second month? But do them a month at a time. Then they don't seem so vague or indefinite. Say, well, I'm going to do this. Well, for how much and for how long is that? No, I'm going to do this for a month. I'm going to check myself then. How did I do? So these 3 categories form an acronym. Jesus, others, you. Joy. J-O-Y. Joy. And what I would suggest is simply that you write that word in your calendar on the last day of the month. Just write the word joy, and it'll be a reminder for you every month to check yourself and see how you've done on just these 3 resolutions, for Jesus, for others, and for yourself. Progress in life can be achieved by a series of small steps. One saint said about other saints that not all the saints did extraordinary things. Some did merely ordinary things, but they really did do them. And so a little bit at a time, a little bit here, and a little bit again and again, and it becomes a habit, and it becomes something where you can see a bit of progress here and have the satisfaction of that, and that too can help you and give you an incentive to do more, a little bit at a time. One for Jesus, one for others, one for yourself. And may you have joy in this new year.
Thank you for listening to a production of WCAT Radio. Please join us in our mission of evangelization. And don't forget, love lifts up, when knowledge takes flight.